Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Grotto in the Tar Pit. The times we live in are very volatile, and it seems like people's rights are quickly being taken away. Our freedom of speech, our right to bear arms, it's all slowly being taken away at some way or another. And it seems like more and more the government is encroaching on our God given rights. We now live in a constitutional republic, but that is quickly being dismantled and turned into something that's more socialist or communist. There are even parties that are becoming communist. Um, when Benjamin Franklin, when they first formed the government, they asked Benjamin Franklin, "What kind of government have you given us?" And he said, "A republic, a constitutional republic, if you can keep it." That means if we can keep it. So he knew from the beginning that it was very fragile. It could be broken down at one point or another and turned into something else that would take away from the rights of the people. So today we're going to bring in somebody who knows a little bit more about this subject. A friend of mine, Paul Hansen. Paul, how you doing?
Real good, thank you. What does grotto mean?
Grotto. Well, I've answered this question before, but you've heard of Jeremiah's grotto or Elijah's grotto. It was like a
No.
little refuge in Mount Sinai. It was a little
Oh,
cave where
okay,
he went and hid.
okay. It's kind of the man cave.
Yeah, kind of. So you're joining me in my man cave.
Okay. Sometimes it's a tar pit.
Sometimes everything around it is a tar pit, so it's my little sanctuary away from the tar pit.
That's your moat around it, huh?
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Paul, I want if you could tell us a little bit about how you were raised and how you came to faith.
Well, I was born and raised in a small town called Pender, Nebraska, and about 1,200 people. We had a cattle feed lot, and I think the most we ever had was 2,000 cattle, maybe 3,000 when you included the cattle we had fed somewhere else. And so we'd buy cattle at 650 pounds and take them to finish them to market because of all the grain in Nebraska that works that way. Um, so I did buy the farm, and had some financial problems. But cattle market's volatile, so I lost a lot of money one year, and I didn't really like living in Nebraska because I was out in the middle of nowhere, and I'm a very social person, and I like living close to a city. And so I ended up moving to Omaha, Nebraska, and started buying real estate there. And I had 28 houses and 50 rental units, and um, and then I moved into the real estate uh, industry there. As far as coming to faith, um, I started reading the Bible when I was 13 or 14 years old. I remember picking up the Bible and reading it, and I thought it was really odd because I didn't read anything. I didn't read my homework. I didn't read the newspaper. I didn't read comic books, nothing. I just loved to work on the farm with my hands. And when I remember picking up the scriptures and reading a little bit of Proverbs, and I'd walk around the farm, and I couldn't figure out why I was thinking about that stuff I was reading. Like I wanted to get back to reading a little bit more. And I did that for like 3 months. And I read the Gospel of John and Proverbs. And I was laying in my bed one night, and I just read the Bible a little bit. I laid it to my side and said, "No man," in my heart. I don't think I said it out loud. I said, "No man wrote this book," and and I believe. And right at that moment, my hands turned over, and kind of like my palms up, and I felt this touch on my chest, this really light touch, and I go, "What was that?" And I just couldn't figure out what just happened. The moment I said, "I believe," and then I just laid there, and I had the most peaceful sleep of my entire night. It's the only time in my life I woke up the same way I laid down, and all the bed sheets are still flat on me. That had never happened in my entire life. And when I opened my
What,
eyes, the room had a slight glow to it.
what was it that stood out so much that made you understand or realize that this wasn't a human book or something done under human power?
Man just wouldn't write it that way. He'd write it a different way. That's what I perceived. this thing doesn't really match Hollywood at all.
One of the things I hear a lot, and I totally agree with it. If this was concocted by the rabbis to, give themselves some kind of prestige or some standing, they wouldn't have put so many times that they messed up in the Bible. You see that the
Yeah,
people
there,
are
there's so many things like that that just didn't match with the way the men's minds would put it together. And I think we both realized that the Holy Spirit was opening my eyes and my ears and my mind and my heart, and that's the only reason we can understand it. Um,
so you were saying you
but
you woke up and you felt different the next day?
Yeah, I opened my eyes and the sun was coming through the window a little bit, just like normal. And I looked at the wall and the wall was shiny. And I go, why is the wall shiny? My room is kind of dark. I go, why is the wall a little shiny? And I actually got out of bed and walked over and touched the wall. And then I walked down the steps and the walls were shiny and I touched them. And as soon as I got to the bottom of the steps and opened the door, then the shininess went away. And I never told anybody that for 10 years because I just didn't like it was just for me. It wasn't for anybody else. But I remember that day as though it happened yesterday. And I didn't change completely that day, but I began changing that day. And ever since I've been seeking. I went for 6 years without telling anybody about that, and then I met some people in Missouri. We had a motorcycle trip down there, and this one girl was sitting on a boat. We were on a kind of like a cruise ship, and she was talking about born again, and I said, that word just fits me perfectly. What's that mean? And she explained it to me. I said, wow. And then I went home and I started looking for like-minded people, and all of a sudden I was tuning into radio stations. It was almost like God was blocking that out. I probably heard it on the radio 100 times, 1,000 times over those 6 years, but it never penetrated until that girl explained it to me. And I think it was God's timing. Um, and then I just couldn't believe it. I went back home and I started hearing it on the radio and good theology. And I was seeking out like-minded people that were really had a desire to read the Bible. And I found a little church in my hometown and a few people that I grew close to, and they started discipling me. And they told me they've never met anybody that grew spiritually so fast. Within a year, they said, a year ago we were teaching you. Now a year later, you're teaching us. So I grew pretty fast.
Amen.
And that was exciting. Got into teaching, and presently I go to a Reformed church, um, much like
Presbyterian?
yeah, Presbyterian, Calvinist, Martin Luther, Jonathan Edwards, um, and Grace Salvation, and I really enjoy that. Um, I live in Texas half the year, and I trying to buy some land in close to Denver or Boulder, Colorado, so I can spend the summer months up here where they're not so terribly hot. Try to get 7,500 altitude, and it's generally below 80 degrees at that altitude. A whole lot better than 100 degrees in Texas and 100% humidity almost.
So for this might be a little off the subject, but for people that are listening that you know they want to be prepared and stuff like that, is it good for them to try to be seeking to buy some land?
Land is Boulder County land is some of the most expensive land in America. So I don't even know if I'll be able to buy anything up here. You don't even get much for $1 million up here. But uh, like they say, land is one thing they don't make more of. Federal Reserve notes they do. So I should have bought land when I was 10 years old. When I was 10 years old, a piece of land was selling for $300 an acre. That
Wow.
same land is about 24,000 an acre now. So um, instead of buying some Tinker toys, I should have been buying land back then. But anyway, that's okay. God provides either way.
What do you think a smart move would be for a Christian that's trying to get into real estate?
Mm, Well, when I was in Nebraska, it was one of the few states in the nation that you could actually buy property that was rentable and have a positive cash flow. Everywhere else in America, uh, my research was showing that you could buy land, and the only anticipation of profit would be through your property would go up in value. Otherwise, you just have a static cash flow. It would pretty much match. The cost of owning the property would be just about the same as you bringing the property. The cost of owning the property was just about the same as the rent coming in. But Nebraska was you'd had a pretty substantial positive cash flow. Um, but it's difficult to buy land because very few people can find good investments that have a positive cash flow, so that brings the property value up higher than you get for rent. But if you can make money in a job and still buy property and hold on to that property, it's an excellent retirement plan because after you get it paid off in 15 or 30 years, it's 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 almost completely all profit after that, which is a whole lot, which is pretty substantial. Um,
Now,
when I was when I was
let's say
in
I have,
business, I started out with $50,000, and in 5 years I turned that into $1 million. So that was pretty good. And at my peak, I was profit 15 to 25,000 a month, and so it worked out really good. And I wasn't paying any federal or state taxes on it after I learned the truth about taxation. Um, so go ahead.
okay. So if I'm just a normal Joe Schmo, I got a regular job, working 9 to 5. I'm paying a mortgage. I got a house, you know, but I want to do a little more. What would be your advice to that person? Would it be to get some kind of duplex and rent it out, or buy a piece of land and build something on it? What do you think the best move in is to plan for the future?
Most importantly, you want to live close to that land so you can get over there and take care of business without having to hire another company to do it or an attorney. That's most important to me. And if you want to evict somebody, you can do it yourself. You don't have to hire an attorney to do that stuff. And you can watch the property, see if it's been damaged. You can actually put in the contract that you go into the property every 2 weeks and check the air conditioning and the filter. They have to let you in every 2 weeks, so you get to look around, see if they're damaging the property or not. That's a great value. But banks love to lend money, so if you can go to a bank and show them a a break even cash flow, they will lend you the money. When I was in business, I would buy $100,000 house for with 20% down, and then I would fix it up a little bit, and I'd go to the bank, and they would lend me the entire amount, the $100,000. I didn't have any money tied up in it. I had my time, but it was bringing in. I had some houses that I paid $17,000 for, and I was making 175% on my money per year. So that was pretty good.
So it was basically the buy and flip. You buy
No,
it, fix it up.
no,
No?
that was just renting out. That was one of my better ones, but it was bringing in 175% of my out of pocket cost.
So basically,
And
just save up enough for the down payment, rent it or buy it, and then fix it up a little bit. Get a loan to get that money, and then rent it out.
rent it out. Yep. And then
So now you
it
got money to
infl-
play with, and you got an income paying
yeah,
paying it
yeah,
off.
yeah. That's unusual. I mean, a finance, not a finance, but those people that go around, they say, "Hey, let us come in and show you how to make money
Mhm.
with your money."
Yeah,
They came in and they said, they told me, they said, "We don't know anybody that's making as much money as you
yeah.
with the amount of money you have, and we can't do anything for you." Uh, and But I was pretty good at law and stuff, and hunting down good properties. Um, and like I said, Omaha was one of the last few places you can buy land and get a good cash flow from it. I
Okay.
don't know what it's like anymore, but
So
it's the government's the biggest problem with rental property, and that's the reason I got into law because of I smelled a rat and I go, this can't be right.
mhm,
The government cannot intrude this much. This is something wrong with this. So I started seeking people that understand history and law, and I quickly learned that the government uh, applies laws, but they apply them unconstitutionally
yeah,
for their benefit. And the truth is that once you learn the law, that you can almost operate completely separate from the what they call the United States of America, and operate completely under the laws of the community, your neighbors, which is called common law.
oh
You
man,
don't have to go to the government to get somebody moved off of your property. They don't own that land, and you can write it in the contract. If they don't pay rent, they got to move out the next day. You don't have to go to the court and get an eviction. And like in
now
California, some of those people had to take they take 6 months to a year to get to rent somebody
or
to remove
longer,
somebody. Yeah,
or longer. Yeah.
and
Uh,
it's just such
I
a
I had friends that were doing that. They'd go, they'd squat, they turn on a utility. So now it's gonna take them 6 months. And after that, they'd take it to court, get a 6 month extension. And then after the 6 months, they would bring in a pregnant lady or an elderly person, and they'd be
wow.
like, oh, now there's a pregnant lady or an elderly person. So now you got to give us an extra 6 months on top of that. 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, it bankrupts society, and people in power, they love that because it shuts down so much property, makes it unprofitable, and they could swoop in there and take that property away from those people at a discount. And that's the biggest thing that motivates us. A lot of those judges and lawyers, they are looking for investment property, and this is how they grab them. They grab them from people that can't make it because the government destroys them. So what I was doing is right at the end there, when I had all those houses, I had 28 houses, I think 26, 28, and 50 rental units. And some of the houses were a couple 100,000. But anyway, right at the end, I realized that I could just write it in my contract and move them out, and the government couldn't do anything about it. It was in the contract. You don't pay rent, you got to move out the next day. And I show up, moved them out. The cops would show up and say, "Hey, look at this contract." And then the cops would start, "Hey, you got to go to court. You got to go to court. Will you swear under your own personal commercial liability that you have authority to tell me I have to go to court, or you have authority to interfere with my contract?" And they would walk away. They would call their supervisor in front of me and say, "Mr. Hansen, that lawyer guy down here, he's saying this and this and this and this." And the supervisor say, "Leave him alone. Just leave him alone. Leave." And I wish I would have learned that a lot sooner. It would have made me
How does a
hundred.
person find out all this lingo?
Uh,
Because
pay me
it's
35.
basically
Pay,
legalese,
pay,
right?
pay me
It's a
30.
whole
Pay me
nother.
35. Pay me $35 an hour, and I'll show you. It only
Okay.
takes a couple hours. It's real cheap. I mean, I sell briefs to people that the lawyers will charge 50,000 for. I sell them for $35.
Okay.
Lawyers will sell them for $50,000, 25,000, $10,000. I sell them for $35. When I was in Nebraska, I remember one time I went into the court to the court clerk and criminal court, and I walked up to this lady working at the main desk, and I said, I need to look at such and such case number, Paul State versus Paul Hansen. And she looks up at me and she says, "You Paul Hansen?" I go, "Yeah." She says, "Man, um, oh, what happened here? I'm on the screen now. Is that okay?
That's okay.
There,
I just
there you
switched to
go.
you.
Okay, that's okay. Do I just ignore that screen and you got
Yeah.
control of
If
it?
it goes straight to you, it's okay.
Okay. So anyway, she looked up at me. She says, "You're Paul Hansen. Man, everybody talks about you. And when your briefs come in, they make copies of them, take them home and study them. And she said, I always wanted to meet you. I work in the back, and I always wanted to meet you. She says, you're actually well respected here, even though they're trying to destroy you. Um, the government's cost me probably $5.5 million and very destructive. But I didn't know the law. I didn't know how to defend myself. But now I'm kind of coming back with force. Um, got any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah. So what were some of those things that you were putting in that she was so excited about?
Okay, the main thing is you mentioned the republic. Um, what kind of government have you given us? See, the United States is not a government to govern people. The United States is an entity created for military purposes. If you read the Constitution for the United States of America, which is a constitution that's subsequent and additional to the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation is actually called the Constitution of the United States of America.
So that's
You
where there's a difference between the United States in all capitals and the United States of America in capitals and lowercase, right?
know there is an aspect to that. The Articles of Confederation um, is written out as the Constitution of of the United States of America. The United States Constitution is the Constitution for the United States of America. So the first Constitution created it. The
So
other
there's
one,
two constitutions basically.
well, the second one is an addition to the first. The first one never disappeared. There's no evidence that the first one was ever repealed, even though almost every law school tell you it's repealed. But when you ask them, give me the evidence that it's been repealed, there is none. And
Well,
even
if
in
that
the
were true, then this country doesn't really exist. We're in a totally different country.
no, uh, the word country means people. Uh, country actually means, in this organic sense, is people that lived in the country versus citizen. People that live in the city. Okay, the city is more congested people, and the country is just more scattered. But uh, so anyway, the people were here, and they had difficulty doing things individually. So they got together and they said, "Hey, let's create this entity, the Artists Confederation, so that the all the states at that time, 13 states, can work together, predominantly for defense of the country, because they just got done beating the British. Right? British is the most powerful nation in the world. The only reason we beat British is because of the distance between us. If we were closer, we would have never won probably. Um, so God gave us those big vast oceans for a good reason. We wouldn't kill each other. We wouldn't have as near as many wars that way. But um, so we just got done beating the British, and the British didn't know to stop fighting and then come back later. So they knew that, and they got together, and they formed the Articles of Confederation, where all the states came together for military purposes. So to defend our, if one state gets attacked, all the states would join together and defend it. So British attacks Virginia, all the other 12 in the Confederacy would get together and defend it, and the same vice versa. So, um, and then they found out, they believed that even though they beat the most powerful nation in the world operating under the Articles of Confederation, or their principles thereof, they said we don't have enough military force, and they created the Constitution for the United States of America. They talked about taxing powers and um, basically more of a governance, monetary wise, and tariffs and things like that, to finance the military side of what the people wanted in position. Um, but anyway, the republic government is a military aspect of the people. It's not their government. It's only It's only created for the military aspect of defending the country. The people are supposed to be left alone to do anything they want as long as they don't do harm to anybody else. It's called common law, and it's called freedom. And
And that's all based on the Bible, right?
yep, that's the Bible. In when Jerusalem, when Israel was set up, God did impose taxes on them. It's a very small
Yeah.
amount, and the United States has plenty of money coming in through tariffs. They own 26% of the landmass of America. All kinds of revenue. Uh, I wouldn't be surprised we're 10 or 20 times more powerful than any other nation in the world militarily. Um, Especially potentially if we need to draw upon our resources.
Yeah, I think it said that our yearly military budget is bigger than the next three put together.
Yeah, yep, yep. And we're only pulling off like 5% of our national gross national product, just a small percentage. So if we wanted to draw off 25%, can you imagine? Um, and when Japan attacked us, those people that have those people that were in the military that actually knew America quite well, one of their sayings was when they bombed Pearl Harbor, we just woke the great giant. This is not going to go good for Japan in the long run. We woke up a very powerful nation, and we just got done fighting Germany, and we were. Uh, if Germany didn't pull a lot of resources off, we would have smashed Japan overnight. But it took a lot more work to do that because of that. But anyway, so the military is there for military purposes. The U.S. courts are all administrative courts; they're not judicial. Um, if you
Can you
study
tell
the
me the
Constitution,
difference between administrative and judicial?
judicial is where the jury decides the law and the facts. There can, and when I say jury, it's actually the judge of that particular case. Um, Judicial generally means that, to simplify it, is 12 people that are impartial, one or 12 people. You could have 1,000 people if you want. In Greek, in the Greek, no, in the Roman Empire, they could convene 1,000 people as judges to go against uh, a high power man like Nero or somebody like that, because they knew that they had so much wealth that if we had just 12 people, they would threaten them and bribe them, and we'd never get justice. So in the Roman Empire, they were allowed to, if the people believed it was necessary, convene up to 1,000 people as judges, because they go, if the most wealthiest person in the world cannot, or in Rome cannot bribe 1,000 people, uh, but he could easily bribe 12 or threaten them. So, but in America, it's generally 12 people, and they have in common law they call it, uh, which is adopted from the Magna Carta uh, of 1215. I think it's called the date that came about a long time ago, 1215 or 1512. But anyway, I get them mixed up. Dyslexic there. Uh, and those 12
Administrative.
judges can they get to determine the law and the facts of the case. Nobody else does that. Now, in an administrative proceeding, like the U.S. courts, all U.S. courts, although any judgment that could be appealed all the way to the United States Supreme Court is an administrative court. It's a U.S. court. It's not common law. It's not of the people. It's of the entity of the United States. It's administrative, and the reason it's called administrative is because Congress makes the law, and the administrative courts enforce those written laws. That makes sense?
Yeah. Now, not to cut you off, but I know that when Moses was in charge, he pretty much went to God and said, "Hey, you know what? This is too much for me. I can't handle all these people coming to me and asking me for about these disputes and little skirmishes and stuff like that. And God told him to appoint people over hundreds or thousands, hundreds, and tens, right?
Mhm.
So basically, the way it's supposed to be is we handle things within the community, and if that dispute doesn't, we can't figure it out between the people we have governing ourselves, then we go to we're supposed to go to administrative court, and then that's where it's judged on.
No, no, because the Seventh Amendment says that any judgment that derives from common law can only be reheard in another common law proceeding. Which means, if let's just say I mowed your yard, you're supposed to pay me $25, and we took it to common law, and um, so
But
we,
there are no common law courts today, right?
yeah, as long as there's common people, you'll have common law courts. The United States courts have actually said that the sovereignty of America resides in the people, not in the government. So now, common law ideally works can only work well in a godly country. You take common law into a pagan country, you're not going to have very good courts. But if you can get 12 people together, and the vast majority of them are students of God's word, you've got actually a good chance for a good hearing there. Try to do that in a pagan country, it's not going to go well. Um, Jesus was judged in a pagan court and condemned. Not exactly um, good setting. You don't want to be in that one. But anyway, so the sovereigns of, it's actually in America, it's actually broken down by Nebraskans, Texans, Wisconsin people, Virginia, each area, and then they still try to break it down even smaller to your local community. So and the Magna Carta talks about your peers, that you'll be judged by your peers. So who's your peers? It's generally your neighbors at your same vocation or same status in society and things like that. Um, in a biblical sense, you're not supposed to stack the deck in your favor. You're supposed to always get impartial people to act as judges in any matter. Um, even if you're head of your household, you're supposed to be impartial. You're supposed to and look to God's guidance on everything. You're not supposed to be a dictator there. And the principle holds true all the way to the smallest court of the family, all the way through the church court, and city, state, and county, and even worldwide courts. But common law is bringing people together that are very close to the matter, and you get a majority ruling. In the United States courts, every state has a statute written in the state statute that they're required to honor any foreign judgment that possesses due process. Due process defined is a fair trial. That's what due process is. It's a fair trial for both parties. They were noticed. They had opportunity in the court. They had an impartial hearing, impartial judges. There's a record of the proceedings. There's a whole lot of things that go into due process. And but the state courts are told by the people that if a foreign judgment is brought to the county court clerk and given to the county court clerk, and there's evidence of due process, fair trial, that the court clerk is supposed to put that on the record as a valid judgment that the state will enforce. And then you can walk down to the U.S. Marshal or your neighbor or the sheriff and enforce that judgment, no matter where it's from. If it's from Germany or a common law court across the street. Now, a common law court is not a location. It's a place where the American people got together and made a ruling that possesses due process. And God goes through great uh, a great deal of communications about what a fair court is, what a fair judge is. And you don't want to be on a jury and be prejudicial. You're violating God's law. Um, scriptures talk about even if your wife uh, violates God's law to the extent to where you have to vote to put her to death, you're supposed to do it. Um, so there's a principle there. You're not supposed to be impartial at all. You're supposed to hold God's standards exactly as He presents them. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Questions?
Okay. So I mean, one of the things I heard is that if you've never applied for a driver's license, technically you can drive under common law. You
No,
just can't go on paid roads or something like that.
no, the license has no issue at all. Um, let's say you have an automobile. The word motor vehicle in the U.S. court is defined in their statutes. Um, we can use motor vehicle in our own definitions, but if you're going to use the word even vehicle in a U.S. court, you got to pay attention to how it's defined. Um, but if you're driving your automobile anywhere in America uh, in a non-commercial capacity, and you're doing it in a proper way to not put other people in danger, not damage the road excessively, um, you have a right to do that. Okay. Now the long-standing maximum of law is the I'm just going to refer to United States written law is they can't tax a right. Congress cannot even get together and talk about governing your right. They can't even get together and do it. It's unconstitutional for them to do it, and they can actually be removed from their office if they start doing that, and they should be. Um, so you have a right to mobility. In the scriptures, when the Israelites traveled, uh, God never gave any nation the authority to block Israel to travel, to landlock them. They were allowed. God gives permission to anybody to cross over property as long as it's done respectfully and do as little damage as possible, and just do it as though it's your as a good neighbor, right? Otherwise, I could buy an acre of land and you could buy all the land around it and destroy my use of that land because you wouldn't let me travel on your land. I'd have to come in with a helicopter every time. That lowers the use of that land tremendously, and that's a violation of God's law. And some nations did block Israel, and God actually told them to go back to that land and kill them all. He didn't kill them because they blocked their use of the land. He killed them for other reasons, wiped out that nation. So now, um, as far as the actual law of the operation of a motor vehicle, in the United States written law, a motor vehicle is defined as a device that is used, a motorized device that is used to transport passengers or cargo for commercial gain. So remember, I told you you could pass over any land in America as a right. Okay, a right doesn't involve commercial gain. So you can't drive in the middle of cross my land and stop in the middle and set up a lemonade stand. You can pass over my land as a good neighbor, but you can't stop and start selling lemonade. Um, Now, as far as passing over the land to deliver your crops to your corn or somebody to another neighbor, um, that can be determined by a local jury if you're abusing that particular road or not. That's up to common law. So, in the United States system, uh, let's say you have a piece of land where the cops like to sit, and they see you driving by with a expired plate on your car, and they pull you over and they say license, registration, or insurance. I have packages I sell people that goes systematically through what to do in that that situation. And see, that officer that pulled you over, he has to have three main things. He has to have probable cause to pull you over. Okay, the plate, a plate on your car or no plate on your car is not probable cause. He has to have evidence uh, that your activity is associated with with a with one that is governed by U.S. written law. Okay, remember I told you that in the United States, their written law it says that a motor vehicle is a device that carries passengers or cargo for commercial gain. Okay, so have you ever heard of the supremacy clause in the
No.
U.S. Constitution? Supremacy clause, that means that any law that the federal government passes, all the subdivisions of the United States, that's all the government entities all across the United States, matter of fact, anywhere in the world, they're subject to that written law, and they cannot make a law that is contrary to that. So every piece of land where the United States has government's authority uh, as to a motor vehicle, it has to match the federal written law. So if let's say you had Douglas County, Nebraska, the biggest county in Nebraska. Let's say they are pulling cars over and they ignored the principle of commercial gain. Um, I've actually worked with people that have done this in other counties. They've gone in and showed that they can only pull cars over that are active in commercial gain, and all the others that they are pulling over and extracting punishment or fee from is unconstitutional. Once that county is noticed of that and do not stop doing it, the federal government can cease giving financial support to that county or that state. So there's been some counties and some states that the federal government withdrew financing until the till that county or state or city municipality uh, started obeying the supremacy clause written laws as to vehicle. It's kind of complicated. I'm just trying to put it in a
Yeah.
nutshell.
Yeah, I
So
know.
your protection from the United States is actually the Constitution. That
So
like Benjamin
would you
Franklin.
say that these laws or the way the court system has functioned, it's gone from trying to be in a place that is helpful for everybody to keep everybody safe to a place of renovate making income.
Yeah, yeah, highway robbers.
So that's
Uh,
basically that's what all these tickets and stuff is about, making money for the county. And
Vast
it,
majority of them. Yeah. Okay, if you let's say you own a house and your neighbor owns the house on the other side of the road. See, the government can only own land for military necessity. They can't own land for any other reasons. Try to convince the average American of that, and they'll go, "Well, what about these national parks
national parks.
and all this stuff?" And well, under close examination, they probably don't have constitutional authority to do it. So anyway, let's back to property ownership. Um, so you own land on one side of the highway, and they own land on the other side of the highway. The government can't own the land in between. Very few exceptions to that. They can only own that land if it's a military necessity. And there are times when some roads are military necessity. Individual states have concluded that, like railroads, when the railroads were put in, they considered them military necessity because they had to get military from the East Coast to the West Coast very fast, or they're going to lose the war. Um, okay, so um, see, military necessity is not it's not something that's locked in. It can be re-examined anytime, and they can say, "Oh, hey, that's no longer military necessity. You got to give that back to the people," or they can grab new land and convert it into military necessity. And we're doing that all the time. So now I'm forgetting what was the whole point of me going this direction. I'm trying to
You're
Oh,
talking
okay.
about property?
You own the house on one side. Your neighbor owns the house on the other side. That means you guys own all the land to the center of that road. Now, there's a strip of land that's generally 20 foot on each side of that center line. It's called an easement. It's open for people to exercise for the conveyance of utilities, walking, bicycling, driving, gas lines,
But it's not
electric
always
poles.
open. Usually people put a fence on it. I've seen a lot of easements where people have put fences on them.
Well, they could. Well, I'm just saying that road. It's in front of your highway. The cars are going down it by 50,000 cars a day.
That's an
It's not
easement.
owned by it's not owned by the government. It's owned by you to the center of the road, but it's an open easement. Because remember, we talked about you can't landlock people. So when you bought that land, uh, it was clear to you that a portion of that was an open easement there. Now, if somebody bought a house behind you when they bought it, there's no open easement here. Maybe a little narrow alley, 10 foot wide,
So to
but
a point,
it's not.
it's to give people freedom. Basically, I'm not leaving you trapped in your property.
Yep, yep. And in most jurisdictions, it's a there's a road every mile in most jurisdictions, at least generally in populated areas, somewhat populated, every mile there's going to be an open easement for travel. If you fly over America in an airplane, you can look down those square miles. They're all over America. Some areas it's a city block. There's an open easement. Other areas it might be 10 miles before there's another road. It just depends on the population and the people decide there. But if enough people move into an area, the people can get together and say, "Hey, we need a road here. I got to drive 10 miles to get to town just to get on the road. So can we make a road a half a mile from my place? If there's a road every mile, the furthest you're going to have to go is a half mile to get to a road, right? If you're right in the middle of the intersection, if you go right, you go left, it's a mile. So that's understandable. So that's an open easement. Now the government doesn't own that open easement, but you can't common law dictates the open easement, not the United States common law. The people can get together and say, hey, that open easement is not necessary. They can shut them down or they can have them established. It's not the government's decision.
So I'm going to
Um,
ask a very controversial question now.
sure.
Um, I pray God, that He's in the midst of this and that He shields us from any problems because people have dealt with a lot of problems for bringing this subject up. And is income tax constitutional?
Yes.
Yes.
Is
Okay.
it constitutionally applied? Generally not.
Yeah.
Every tax is constitutional that I've ever come across, but it's almost always unconstitutionally applied. Okay, you remember we talked about the transportation of passengers and cargo.
Mhm.
Okay, that's not a right. Okay, that's a privilege on specific land. But you have a right to the fruit of your labor. Okay, but that right of the fruit of your labor doesn't exist everywhere. If you come on my land and exercise the fruit of your labor, I can charge you for a tax because you're using my land. Um, or I can decide not to tax you at all. Um, so I can tax you to the point to where you don't want to do anything on my land anymore. Or you say, "Hey,
And that's
Paul, I'll be right over."
constitutional?
No, that's common law. Constitutional is within the four corners of the United States Constitution. Generally, when we say that, and remember the United States has been given about 26% of the American landmass. For I'm not saying that's right, but they possess about 26% of the landmass in America. I think 5% is plenty. They shouldn't have 26%. But and that's where they can conduct their military necessities. Okay, in that land, um, you have a lot, you have way more restrictions than other lands. Okay, you might not be able to carry certain weapons in that land. It's military land. It's military. It's military land. You can't go in there with a loaded tank and say, "Hey, I'm good. I have my rights." They're going to say, "We're going to give you 10 seconds to turn that tank around, or we're going to blow it away." Um, so and that's good because they have a military necessity there. Um, you drive your boat too close to an aircraft carrier, you're going to be blown out of the water because that's a military necessity to keep you away from that aircraft carrier. You might have a nuclear bomb on your little teeny 20-foot boat. They don't know. Um, but as far as state and federal taxes on, remember it's called internal revenue. If you do research on that, it's internal to the landmass of the United States. Remember that 26%? Okay, if you're making income in the landmass at 26% of that land, you're possibly subject to a tax that they require. Not always, and usually not always, but it's potentially that you are. If you're in my land, it's potentially that you're subject to a tax.
From
So
you.
it's called it for me, yeah. Because if I'm in your land, do I have proprietary right in your land or do you have proprietary right?
I would.
You would. Yeah. Not unlimited. You can't have unbiblical activity there and kidnap people and turn them into slaves and stuff. Throughout history, it's been common, but biblically, you can't. It's never allowed. Even if every man on earth allows it, God doesn't allow it, so it's not allowed. Um, so it's anytime you look at a written law or even an oral law, the first thing you think about is proprietary relationship. That's land location within a specific. Let's say the definition of land is a three-dimensional space: height, width, and depth. So if you own land in America, generally you own it all the way to the center of the earth. It's going to be shaped like a triangle all the way down, and then that triangle continues into outer space. That's basically your land mass, your land area. Of course, when you get into real high, the government has the people have agreed to let airplanes fly over your land and stuff, as long as they don't fly so low to interfere with your happiness of that land. So in America, that area is when it's owned by the people, you, um, it's in common law, and it's governed by. If somebody has a beef about what you're doing there, it goes before 12 people, generally of your neighbors. Or you could be one of the jurors. If another neighbor has a beef, you go in as a juror for him. And ideally, and that's common law. So it's pretty exciting to understand common law because uh, if the federal government sends you a tax bill, let's just say you made $10,000 and they want 10%, you can. I've never lost a case in the IRS. The people I work with, we've won over 100 cases. Almost nobody in America has ever won a case against the IRS. We've won every single one of them. The client listens to us. And the way we do it is we never say we owe a tax. We never say we don't owe a tax. We keep our mouth shut except in three questions. What's your name? What do you want to be called by? You can be called by anything you want, Mr. X or your name. It's up to you. How do you respond? Okay, I respond, Paul John Hansen. Why Paul John Hansen? Because there's 13 Paul Hansens in Nebraska. So Paul John's kind of, I've had my mail get sent to the wrong people. Paul John Hansen, there's only like 3 of them in Nebraska. But anyway, and then the other question that you answer is what your birthday, because if you got a name associated to a birthday, probably nobody else in the world is going to have the same thing. It really helps to get down to the right person. Okay. And then the other one that you always answer is how can we communicate with you? Uh, Ideally, you give them a phone number, email address nowadays, and a mailing location. It's not an address, it's a mailing location. No zip code included because the zip code is a federal zone. Don't want to use the zip code. I can show you how to use the zip code, but with a
Wow.
disclaimer.
So the moment you write in a zip code, you're already admitting.
No, no.
No?
You can write zip code on your mailing location all you want. It doesn't change the owner of that land, but it does give a presumption of it. And they'll grab hold of any presumption they can get. Are you a U.S.
But
citizen?
yes, I am.
Okay, what day did you become a U.S. citizen?
The day I was born.
The U.S. written law says there's only one way to become a U.S. citizen.
Mhm.
It has nothing to do with birth, and it says and it actually says in it and no other way. It says you have to raise your right hand if you have a right hand. Not everybody has a right hand.
So if
I
you were
have
born without a right hand, you can't be a U.S. citizen.
no. They'll have a provision for it, and if you can't talk, they'll have a provision for it. But
If you're a baby, for say.
and I was born with 2 left feet, so I don't have a whatever. But anyway, the U.S. written law says that the only way you can become a U.S. citizen is by oath, and then it says and no other way. So
Wow.
if you're born in Mexico, for example, and you come up here and say, "Hey, I want to become a U.S. citizen," they'll say, "Okay, come into this room, raise your right hand." This is after you signed all kinds of papers and stuff. Takes 6 months to do this, maybe, or 6 years. Go into this room, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. I swear to whatever the U.S. oath is. It's very similar to the oath of military oath, but that's how you become a U.S. citizen. So if you talk to somebody on the street or anywhere in the world, said, "Are you a U.S. citizen?" They say yes, and you ask, "When did you take the oath of citizenship?" If you're from Mexico and you came up here, they'll know exactly what you're talking about because they remember that day. But other people say, "Well, when I was born in the United States." Then you can explain to them you're not a United States citizen unless you take an oath of citizenship. Now they say a birth
Wow.
certificate is associated with United States citizenship. It's not true. You are treated in many instances as a U.S. citizen pursuant to a birth certificate. But as soon as you turn 18, then you have to go in and take, if you want to become a U.S. citizen, you have to raise your own right hand and take an oath of
Wow.
citizenship. Pretty
So
interesting, huh?
so technically, I'm not a U.S. citizen right now until I go and raise my right hand and tell them
It's
I'm.
not. It's
You know.
not. I wouldn't use the word technically, and you never want to be in a U.S. court and say you are a U.S. citizen or you are not a U.S. citizen. You have no requirement to prove that,
So
and
you
you
want it to
never
be
want to.
ambiguous.
No, you never want to try to prove. You never want to try to prove something ever in a U.S. court because that court is designed to trap you. So
Okay.
I and I'll tell you a story about how I won a federal case in Florida just on that simple question. But see, if you go into a U.S. court and you say you're not a U.S. citizen, the plaintiff's attorney say, "Your Honor, you heard him. He said he's not a U.S. citizen." The judge will go, "Yeah, I heard it." Then he'll look right at you and he'll say, "Prove it." You just shot yourself in the foot, and the jury is over there rolling their eyes about who is this nut. You just lost your case. But if you said you are a U.S. citizen, the judge, the attorney, the opposing attorney will look at the judge and say, "You heard that, didn't you, Your Honor?" Said, "You're yes, I heard it. Thank you. You just told the judge they have
Authority.
evidence of jurisdiction over you because you're a U.S. citizen. Because U.S. citizens are governed by U.S. written law. You're not governed by common law. You're governed by U.S. written law. You're considered a franchisee. You're in this area because you went to the United States and asked for permission to do business in the United States lands, even though you might do it all over the world. You're considered domiciled in the District of Columbia perpetually. That's
So
why
basically, the
you're
U.S.
taxed.
government is a big business, a big corporation, and we're like a
Well,
subsidiary, or like you said, a franchise business
they're
off of that.
doing they're yeah. If you become a U.S. citizen, you become a you could be you become a you're seeking a privilege from the United States. See,
We're part of that.
if somebody comes from Germany, Japan, raises their right hand, U.S. citizenship, they're coming for a benefit from the United States. They're not coming for a benefit from the American people. Indirectly, they are, but they're actually coming. They're coming through the United States, and and for some people, that's a really good deal because they just escaped from genocide, maybe in another country. For other people, uh, maybe not so good. So now, in my case, when I was in Florida, they tried to give me they were trying to give me 35 years in jail potentially for interfering with the collection of taxes, and I was in court, and the judge asked me a whole bunch of questions and see if I was capable of defending myself, and after quite an interview, the judge says, "Mr. Hansen, I perceive you a very intelligent person." you know, so I was allowed to do certain things in the courtroom, and during the trial, criminal trial, the prosecutor. This is the only time the prosecutor was nice to me. Only time. I don't think this prosecutor has ever lost a case. I don't know how long that she was a criminal prosecutor, but I don't think she's ever lost a case. Many prosecutors in the federal systems never lose a case um, because it's an organized crime court. Um, but she said, "Mr. Hansen, I'm sworn in, witness stand." He says, "Where were you raised? What'd your parents do for a living? Did you enjoy growing up in Nebraska? Oh, you're a U.S. citizen, aren't you, Mr. Hansen?" And I stared at her, and I just waited 4 or 5 seconds, and I said, really slow, "I have no evidence in my possession I ever elected to become a United States citizen." I said it real slow so the jury could, and essentially a case dismissed. I was walking out of the courtroom. Yeah,
She must
I'm
have hated you
shortening it.
after that.
I'm shortening it up, because the trial went on. But anyway, walking out of the courtroom, the U.S. Marshal walked up behind me and he says, "Mr. Hansen, let me talk to you." I said, "Yes." He says, "I've been here 8 years. Not one person has won a case that went to court here in this federal courtroom, this whole courthouse. Not one person in 8 years that I've been here that went to trial won their case. Not even one, except you." He says, "I don't know what the hell you did, but I'm impressed." And this lawyer walked up to me on the way out. He says, I, "What happened? What just happened in there? I've never seen anything like this before." What happened? They never lose their cases. Why would they be giving up on your case? They might have uh, they probably spent close. I was told that they spent. Somebody actually did research, and they spent $500,000 at least, maybe $1 million, on putting that case together. And but anyway, I was the only person that walked out of there with a win. Now Ken Hovind was my co-defendant, So he won too. So just to make it simple, I just talk about myself. But he did the same thing. He got up there and said the exact same thing because I coached him to. Uh, and I didn't coach him how to testify. I coached him how to keep the burden of proof on the United States. Because remember, I said if you say you're a United States citizen, you lose. If you say you're not, you lose. So you can't do that.
So you want to
I
keep
have,
it where they have to prove everything and not
yeah.
you.
Yeah. Here's another question: do you live in the city, county, state, or the United States? There's four questions there.
Well, I have no proof.
No, I have no. I have now. You need to write this down. I have no evidence in my possession that I ever elected to live or reside or be a resident in the city, county, or state or the United States. And then you just say, do you have, you look at the prosecutor, do you have any proof in front of the jury? Do you have any proof? You just shifted the whole burden of proof to them, and the jury's sitting there like, what's going on here? That's an easy question because guess what? City, county, state, United States in a U.S. court is a subdivision of the United States. All those terms are defined as a possession or territory of the United States. It's
Now,
it's
what kind
it's
of cases is
it,
this
it,
relevant in? Is it for property
property
or
tax. I worked with a guy that took $30 billion of property off the tax rolls in Orange County, California. They didn't do that because they wanted to, and the federal judge said told the people that he was aiding $30 billion of land, and federal judge told the people sitting there. He says, "I recommend you let me seal this case because your lives are in danger. They will kill you
oh,
to keep this quiet." I'm meeting with a guy tomorrow that went to Washington, D.C., District of Columbia, went to the archives, had the help of 100 government people to search for one box in the archives of state constitutions and got a certified copy of the state constitutions. And in 12 of them, he was able to prove that they were forged. The ones that are in society now in front of people are actually forged documents. And the key difference between those documents is something to do with the United States, uh, any United States office, city, county, state, municipal cannot uh, aid cannot aid a corporation for financial gain. Okay, and it has something else in there too. I can't remember what it was, but he brought those home. It cost him $75,000 to get a copy of all that stuff because he not only got a copy of the Constitution, he got a copy of how they were all ratified and brought into law. It's called fully promulgated, proof that they are the,
state constitution.
the law of the land in relationship to individual states. Um, see, see this. Nebraska is a when you look at a map of Nebraska, um, proverbial Nebraska, right? Okay, now if you look at a map of the state of Nebraska, it's only going to be little dots in Nebraska because the state of Nebraska is federal zones in Nebraska. And U.S. written law will say that there's a state within a state. So Nebraska is called a state, and then there's a state within a state. It's called state of Nebraska. It's a federal zone. Guess which laws apply in Nebraska? It's the people's common law. Okay, which is floating because you can be redetermined every time you have an issue and you can take it into common law. Now, the other land is state of Nebraska. And in all 50 states, state is defined as a federal possession. So that's land owned by that's little islands in Nebraska that's owned by the United States of America. And if you go to the written law in Nebraska and you look up the owner of that land, it'll actually say the United States of America, exactly as is written in the Articles of Confederation. Exactly, where it says, and this union shall be styled as the United States of America. I show this to lawyers and they just like, wow, this is weird. This is really weird.
So
Um,
you're saying that basically one of the points that you're making is that there's a lot of things going on with the government or municipalities, counties, and stuff like that, where they don't mind people losing their houses and stuff like that, or bad things happening to them. And it's kind of like a good old boy organization where the sheriffs, the judges, and the senators or whoever might be involved, they know these things are happening. They deliberately make it harder for or easier for people to lose things so they can sweep up and get a piece of whatever they're losing. And basically, if you're able to tap into it, if you figure it out, if you're able to get your piece of it, then you become a target to them.
they'll kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you figure it out, they'll kill you. Um, I've talked, 5 people I've worked with have been killed. I think it's 5. Several of them were left to dead. Some of them were shot in their car, and they thought they killed them. They didn't. God preserved their lives. So yeah, a lot. This is happening all over the country. Not every day, not every hour, not every state, but yeah, you like I said, that federal judge said, "Let me seal this case. Uh, People in power will kill you. They'll kill you." When the railroad moved across this country back in 1780 or something, 85, 87. Uh, um, when they wanted a piece of land and they had trouble getting it, they just killed the people. Just went in and killed them. And then the other neighbors seen that happen. They go, okay, 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 we'll sell you the land. We'll let you have the land. And that still happens today, but it's associated with more with property taxes and federal taxes and state taxes and sales tax. Guess where sales tax, state written law sales tax applies. Come on, I've just talked to you about proprietary right.
It
Doesn't
should be
apply on.
going to it wherever I'm doing the transaction. If I'm doing
Okay,
the transaction in your store, the taxes should really go to you. Or if I'm working at your store and I make or working on your property,
yeah, yeah.
making money, then I should be paying you a portion of what I'm making.
Okay, you've been a good student because it's proprietary. Okay, if I walk into your land and you want to charge me something, whatever, whatever, that's called a tax. A charge is a tax. Okay, so if you walk into government land, they can tax you. They can tax you so high that you go, oh no, 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 I'll go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or they can say so low that, hey, this is a lot better than over there.
Which is what's happening in in Silicon or Silicon Valley, right? That they're
Yeah,
taxing the companies there so much that they're just moving. They're moving to
yep,
Texas or other places where it's easier to do business.
yeah. Uh, but see, they're taxing them. Um, anyway, if you go to an area and you're going to do business that's not on government land, I don't know if they can tax you just because you're a corporation. You're existing as a corporation pursuant to that state's laws, but you're not doing land on that state land. But see, when you're a corporation, they might treat you as a U.S. citizen. Remember, I said the U.S. citizen is taxed as being domiciled perpetually in the District of Columbia. I would assume that the corporation is also considered perpetually domiciled in the federal zone, the state zone, state land, federal government land. So that's why they're taxed. But they can drop that status and operate tax free anytime they want as a right. Um, some of them do that. Others say, well, it's to our advantage to stay a corporation because we get this benefit, blah 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 blah. All kinds of different scenarios. But yeah, you're right. Sales tax. Uh, when I go across the street here and I buy fast food places where I was just at, if that land is not owned by the government, they don't, as a matter of law, they can't charge me sales tax.
So let me ask you, Paul. Um, a lot of people that have been locked up and that have been in the system know this a little bit, that you can go pro perp and be your own lawyer. What does it really take to be a lawyer? Is everybody their own lawyer to begin with?
A lawyer is, it's just somebody that's proficient in law. Uh, there's family law, there's church law, there's the bar association law, there's baseball law, there's basketball law, there's United States law, there's state law. So law doesn't really mean anything. Um, to become an attorney is an association. It's called a bar
Association.
association. Okay, it's an association. Guess what? You can't sue an association for disassociating you. So if you have a bar license, they can disassociate you anytime they want because it's a association. Like, you can disassociate me anytime you want. You can push a button and turn me off right now and never talk to me again. You have every right to do that. No common law court or statutory court um, has any say so about it, unless you're breaching a contract that we had in agreement to activity. But if you, I was in Nebraska legislature and I gave a speech and I got a standing applause, and nobody else did. And a lawyer came up to me and says, I'm really impressed with you. And that was pretty fascinating. He says, I'll sponsor you to become a licensed bar attorney. He says, I'll sponsor you. And I said, no, I don't. I'm not interested in that. You can give me a bar attorney license. I wouldn't take it because they would take it away from me immediately anyway.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't follow the good old boys plan. But anybody can. You don't have to go to school to get a bar license.
So would you say that
You have to be sponsored by somebody that has a bar license. But you don't have to go to. You don't have to have any formal training. You have to pass the bar license test.
now would you say that a majority of the people that are in the bar associations have no actual real grasp of what constitutional law is?
No, because they have internet. They
Yeah.
can- if you spend an hour on the internet searching any of these topics we've talked about, people will start talking and they'll go, huh, that's interesting. But vast majority of them, I can't remember who the famous guy was, but he says some people walk along and stumble and fall into the truth, and they quickly stand up, dust themselves off, and continue on their way
Yeah.
as though nothing happened.
So
And that's
basically,
what
they're
most
just operating on, you know, mode of operation. Oh,
no,
that it might not be right, but that's what everybody else does.
yeah, they plug their ears and run away screaming so they can't hear anymore. So they believe they can be not liable, but they know that as soon as they study the truth, that they'll realize that, like, the bar association is organized crime. Most of Congress is organized crime. Uh, not because the laws are unconstitutional; it's because they're unconstitutionally applied. And sometimes you'll find a sheriff that will sit down and listen to you, and it's very seldom,
Okay.
but it is possible.
One major issue that's going on is, like, I'm not sure if you've heard about it, but how much the Muslim population is taking over London and places in Europe. And I heard that there's some places here in America where the population is becoming increasingly more and more Islamic, and they want to implement Sharia law. How probable do you think it is that they might start slipping in some of that Sharia law into
Yeah.
our United States laws?
Before I go to the Sharia law, let me finish one little sentence on property on sales tax. A friend of mine, I was telling him about sales tax, proper application of sales tax, the written law of the state, city, county, state. Uh, he says, Hansen, you're full of it. I don't believe any of this. So I said, you going to buy anything expensive this, you know? He says, yeah, this week I'm going to go down and buy a $700 or $800 grill from, I think it was Menards. I said, okay, I'll stop by tomorrow and give you a package of papers. You walk into Menards, you hand it to them and say you do not wish to pay sales tax. And he laughed at me. He says, oh, yeah, this will be fun. 2 days later, he comes back, calls me up and says, I don't believe it. I walked out there without paying sales tax. I can't believe this. He says, you just saved me $75. I can't believe it. And I went into Menards.
Is this included in one of the packages that you
Yeah,
give
yeah, you can
or
buy
that you
you can buy
sell?
this. I think it's $35 or something, $25.
Okay.
But I I I studied law, and so anyway, I went into Menards once and I bought something for $1,000, and I said I don't want to just pay sales tax. He said, well, give me your tax exempt number. I said, no, I don't want to pay sales tax because I have a right to purchase products independent of the city, county, and state. And they go, let me get the supervisor. So the supervisor come over and he says, hey, and I explained it to the supervisor. He says, come into the office. I'll call a lawyer real quick. So he says, he calls in. He does a real good job explaining to the lawyer exactly what I told him. I was pretty impressed. And his eyes started getting real big. He started to look at me like, and then he hangs the phone up and he says, that lawyer just told me that you are right. That we can't charge you sales tax. He says, I've been here
Wow.
16 years managing this store. You're the only person that's ever come in. The only person that's ever come in 16 years and noticed me of this. He says, do you have a business card? I said, yes. Here you go. He says, I just can't believe this. So anyway, so we got real life experience with sales tax. Okay, now back to Sharia law. Okay, Sharia, see, common law is going to be different in a pagan nation than it is in a godly nation, right? The laws common there are going to be different. They're going to, let's say you go to an island, there's only 100 people on there, and they practice cannibalism. Their law is a lot different than another island. So common law doesn't really mean much. But unfortunately, in America, we adhere to biblical principles, and we adopted the Magna Carta that was full of biblical principles. Um, but those are not forced upon us. They're they're presented to the jury, and you as a plaintiff or defendant, you're trying to convince the jury, this is God's standard. We best follow God's standard. Okay. Um, Pagans hate that because God, the truth rings out loud with people that have a honest heart. Okay, so uh, no one in the universe has right to apply to call something law when it's not approved by God. Nobody. Let's say the Sharia law says kill the Christian. Guess what? Their law does say kill the Christian. Kill anybody that doesn't say that. I think is it Allah is Lord or whatever. Their law says kill him. Kill him. You have a biblical duty to kill him.
Or
And
tax them, one or the other.
yeah, or cheat him. Uh, that's not God's standard. If it's not God's standard, it cannot be law. So that's what you always have to remember, that um, when you're pulled into a kangaroo court and you're crucified, you're not crucified under God's law. You're crucified under um, tyranny, that which is not law, what God hates. So Sharia law should never. Let's say Sharia law says thou shalt not steal. That's okay. That's God's law, right? That's okay. If you live there, obey that law. But if the next law under that law um, says kill the Christian, That's not good. That cannot be law. So in the same way in America, we might have 1,000 laws that are biblical. We might have another 1,000 that are unbiblical. Those 1,000 laws we're commanded to obey, no matter if a pagan pronounces them in a court or a godly man pronounces them. They're still law. And no matter if your pastor preaches that you need to follow all 2,000 laws, your pastor just doesn't know the truth about what is law, because anything that's contrary to God's law is not law. Can't be. That doesn't mean you have to fight it every time. That doesn't mean you have to go to war and die for it. But you got to remember um, that not all man's laws are compliant to God's laws. And I can't remember who the famous theologian said. He said something like, "Be at peace with man, with but always obedient to God's law. Be at peace with man as much as possible, but always be obedient to God." So one side, as much as possible. No, we never say as much as possible obey God. No, we're supposed to obey God. Just you just do it. You don't say, well, maybe I'll try that.
Like one of the examples that I give of kind of like the situation that we are in this day and age is Jesus. Jesus had to somehow function under rabbinical law, under the law of God, the actual law of God, and under Roman law, which was over that province. So what supersedes what? It's
Well,
always the law of God.
remember when they went up to, I think it was Peter, and they said, "Does your master pay taxes?" And Peter says, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah." And then he went back and told Jesus, "Hey, I told those guys that you pay taxes." Jesus basically said, "Why'd you do that, Peter? Go down, find a fish, go pay the taxes." Jesus was not pleased with that. Uh,
You should have kept your mouth shut, Peter.
what Peter should have said, "I have no evidence in my possession."
That Jesus does or does not pay taxes.
Yeah. So there's a rule. There's a principle there, because Jesus is the creator of the universe. He doesn't get taxed by what he created. And guess what? The same principle applies to us. We are the creator of the government. Okay, God created us. Okay, we owe God, and we create the government. Uh, the government can't tax us. Can't tax us. Okay, we can turn to the government and say, "Hey, I'd like to do this and this and this. How much will you charge me for it?" But they can't send you a mandatory tax. That's why taxation is always uh, voluntary. All taxes with the United States are voluntary. Every single one of them. You don't have to go on their land and buy popcorn. You don't have to live on their land. You don't have to do commercial activity across their land. Um, every tax is voluntary.
But they're allowed to hold monopolies, right?
So are we. So are we.
Okay.
But biblically, I don't think we should. Um, you and I could sell cigarettes, make guns, monopolies, all in common law. They're going to fight you. They might kill you, but we have the right to do that until the common law gets together, a jury gets together and say, no, 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 you can't do that. That's not good. Um, so,
Where do you see our economy going? Do you think it's time to start storing up gold or things of that nature? Some other forms of currency, just in case.
well, I had like 100,000 in cash for the last 20 years. Didn't even bother to draw interest on it, and that was not good. It's lost half its value in the last 20 years, maybe the last 10 years. I don't know. Uh, I used to be able to buy a nice house with that, really nice house with that when I was really young, and now I can get a used car.
Yeah.
Wasn't good. Uh, it you don't generally want to buy something that can be in, inflated to worthless value, and that's why people have bought land for thousands, hundreds, and thousands of years, because the land always produces apples. We always like apples, and I will never starve if I have land that's producing apples, eggs, chickens, whatever. But
Okay.
if you buy gold, you could starve to death, because it might just happen that you could give all your gold to somebody that you've spent all your life savings for a dozen eggs, because you need eggs, you don't need a gold.
Yeah.
Remember when Jerusalem was surrounded in 70 AD? They gave their gold for pigeon manure, pigeon feces. They
so,
were starved.
so they can
They
grow
were starving to
plants.
death. They were starving to death, and they
Yeah, you can't eat the gold.
yeah. And you know what's interesting is they would have pigeons in their towers, and they would send the pigeons out, and they'd go out. They're starving to death. And they'd send the pigeons out, and they would eat fruits and berries, and come home at night and poop in the cage. And they were starving to death so bad that that's what they had to eat.
Oh
But
God, they were eating the pigeon poop.
yep, they were living. Those people were living. The rest of them were dying. Most of the people that died in 70 AD within the walls of Jerusalem were killed by other Jews um, for food.
Okay. I was gonna ask, the way that our society is going down, the way law is breaking down. Do you see us on an inevitable course of becoming socialist or communist in this country?
We're already socialist. Social security. Social security. Remember, I said all business with the United States is consensual, contractual. Can't be forced to do it. Social security is one of them. They can't force you to be in the social security system. They trick you because you walk in and say you're a U.S. citizen. They ask you right in court, "Are you a U.S. citizen?" "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was born here." The judge goes, "Thank you. Pay Social Security.
Thank
Pay
you.
Social
You gave me
Security."
my authority.
Yeah, thank you. You just gave me a right to administrate over you. Okay. And he looks over at the your employer and says, "Take pitch in 7.5% and take 7.5% him and send it to Social Security." That's the law. You just
Yeah.
you just you didn't keep your mouth shut and said, "I have no evidence in my possession," and you wouldn't have had to join the Social Security system.
So the
I,
biggest
I,
takeaway from this is keep your mouth shut. Don't tell them anything.
well, you got those three things. You have to say those three things.
Mhm.
Give them a name. It can be any name, but one that you'll respond to. Birthday,
Does it have to be
and a
your
date.
actual name?
No, no, but it's one you're.
Just whatever I'm going to respond to.
But it's
It could
one
be
you're going to
anything.
respond to. You're going to respond to. They want to be able to communicate with you in a birthday, so that uh, with that name and the birthday, it's not going to get mixed up with anybody else. See, the Social Security number is really an identifier. Nobody else has that number. Let's say if lots of people have my name, Paul Hansen, lots of names, thousands, maybe over 1,000 of them in America, but probably nobody has my name and my birthday. Maybe one or two, possibly. But I guarantee you, nobody has my name and my birthday and a social security number, because there's only that one social security number is only linked to one person. It's never mixed up with anybody else. That's why the government can lock your passport up or your bank account. It's because you have a social security number associated with your passport or your bank account. Now, I can help you. Probably, it's getting tougher. Um, to get a passport with no social security number and a bank account with no social security number, that the government cannot seize or block the passport, because you
Okay.
possess them as a right. But if you put a social security number with it, then they have prima facie evidence that you're a U.S. citizen, and you don't operate under right, you operate under privilege. Kind of
Well,
weird,
man,
kind of weird. Same way as the zip code.
this has been
If they
very,
see
very
that,
informative, Paul.
it's prima facie evidence that you're one of you're administratable. Uh, one cop, a friend of mine was standing by a cop once, and I can't remember. Somebody pulled up in a car, and they rolled down license, registration, and insurance, and the guy says, "No, thank you." and the, and the young officer looks at the supervisor. The supervisor says, "Let him go." What? Let him go, sir. You can go. And that my friend was standing beside these guys talking, and the guy goes, "What are you talking about? Let him go. Why'd you let him go?" He says, "He didn't give us any evidence that he's one of ours." He goes, "What do you mean? He didn't get any evidence that he's one of ours. What do you
Yeah,
mean?"
I think Heiko told me one time he was pulled over on his bike, and the cop told him for license and registration. He goes, "I don't do none of that stuff," and they let him go.
I told Heiko what to say.
Uh,
Yeah, he's very fortunate. It usually doesn't go that easily, but that's happened to me. But anyway, that the supervisor got mad at the guy for keep asking. So he's just shut up and listen to me. Let him go. I'm not going to answer any more questions to you. So that supervisor knew he's not one of ours. He's not one of ours. Let him go. He's not one of ours. And the officer, the other young officer, sitting there like, "What? He's not one of ours." What? I don't understand. Well, you'll never understand unless you get around people like us, and we can coach you. Yeah, if
well,
you're
Paul, we're kind of out of time. If you could tell people
okay,
where they can reach you, if by chance they want your services, if they want your help.
right there on the screen, can they see this
Yeah,
freeinhabitant.info?
yeah, they can.
All
Yeah.
my contact information is on there. Just go to about me. If I travel to California a lot, Vegas. Um, I've been in Boulder, Colorado for 4 months now with clients. I'm going to be in Texas in a few days. But my internet site always says where I'm at and always shows you how to contact me. And the text email is the best way because that's a good record of communications. But yeah, you put this out there, you'll get a lot of hits on it. I did this with an individual, and the person called me back, and she done 1,000 of them, and she says, "You are the most popular person we've ever had."
Okay.
And
Well, hopefully,
yeah,
can you do us one more favor, Paul, and give us a prayer if we can pray us out?
yeah, Lord, thank you for the spirit of this interview. That scriptures talk about the truth shall set you free, and it's not our truth, but that'll set us free, but it's your truth and your ways, your laws. King David said that your laws are perfect, and he just loves to meditate on them and apply them to his nation. May we do the same, Lord. Bless this message. Amen.
Amen. Thanks again, Paul, and thank you guys for joining us for this episode of Grotto in the Tar Pit. We'll see you next time.
Welcome to the